Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fearfully and Wonderfully Me, a podcast designed to help you become the leader you are destined to be. Today's episode, number one, I'm just so excited because today's episode is the first episode of season 4. It is really tough to believe that we are starting season 4 of this podcast, but it just seems like the older I get, the faster time goes. And wow, it's incredible to look back and see nearly 200 episodes since I started this podcast and just see how it's grown, reaching people all over the world. I just, it's amazing to me, but it's exciting, at the same time. So just celebrating, taking a moment today to just celebrate kicking off season 4, the Fearfully and Wonderfully Me podcast. So I wanted to do maybe a short podcast episode on authenticity. And this all came up because I did a post a week or so ago. It actually was an us increase our influence with other people around us as leaders, as women. But there's a paradox in authenticity because everyone admires authenticity in everyone else, but we struggle to be authentic ourselves, right? Because being authentic can be scary, it can be vulnerable. So I did a post and just kind of summarized a little bit from the chapter and, did a picture quote to go with that. And I posted that out to my social. And it was interesting. One of the comments that came back and really what inspired this thought for this podcast was one of the comments said, you know what? I don't struggle with being authentic, but other people struggle with accepting me when I am authentic. And I thought, wow, that's kind of insightful, isn't it? Because a lot of times, someone who is not comfortable themselves with authenticity, with transparency, and being vulnerable in that, if they don't have the strength of character and the confidence to be secure as they stand in that authenticity, many times that person also doesn't have the confidence and the security to stand as you are standing in authenticity, if that makes sense, right? A lot of times, if someone is not comfortable being authentic themselves, then they don't value it with other people. It can be intimidating when someone else is very authentic and we don't have the confidence or security to be authentic ourselves. So we feel the need to put up a false front or a pretense or, kind of that false face or create a different perspective of our identity because we're not comfortable being who we are and fully authentic in that space. Then often we're not comfortable when other people are authentic because it threatens us at some level. So I thought it was an incredibly confident it was his incredibly insightful post that someone shared that said, I have the confidence to be authentic, but other people are not always in that same situation. So yeah, that was pretty thought provoking. And I always try to respond to the posts on social and comments and things. I'm sure I don't catch them all, but I definitely make an effort to respond when someone has an insight or a question or something like that. So I responded to this person, and that's really what I wanted to just share a little bit with you about on this episode today. Because absolutely, as women, as leaders, as we grow and develop our character, we will become more comfortable being authentic. John Maxwell, I once heard him teach that. He says, you know what, we really are 5 different people. He said, number one, you are the person you are with your family. Number two, you are a different person with your friends. Number three, you're a different person at work or in your professional life. Number four, you might be a different person in your community or at church. And number five, you're the person that you really are. And he goes on to teach, he says, as we mature and grow and develop, hopefully those 5 people become closer and closer and closer until at some point you are just you, right? And you are the same you in the same social in different social situations, right? You don't feel a need to put up a persona or have a different identity just based on the environment or the social circumstances. So absolutely, as we grow and mature, that's something that we can benefit from, just that confidence in who we are as a person, not because we're perfect, right? Everyone around us already knows we're not perfect. Goodness knows, everyone around me knows I'm not perfect. And I'm quick to admit it these days. Because now I have the confidence in saying, you know what, I'm not perfect, but my influence with other people doesn't come from having to be perfect. It comes from acknowledging that I'm not perfect and that I do have strengths and weaknesses and working to overcome those weaknesses, right? That's what inspires more influence in people. That's what builds trust in a relationship is not saying that I'm perfect because everyone already knows that I'm not, but what inspires trust is, owning our mistakes or our weaknesses and saying, "Hey, I'm working to get better at this." And as long as we continue that, nobody expects us to be perfect. They will respect the fact that we acknowledge that we are not, if they are, particularly as they themselves grow in security and confidence. So, as you grow and develop, yes, you will become more comfortable being authentic yourself. But here's the thing. What do you do when you encounter someone who's not comfortable as you stand in your authentic self? And so that was my the part of my response to the social media comment was saying, you know what, as you encounter those people, and you will, absolutely you will, there will always be people who are not as far along on their journey as you are on your journey, right? And the key to increasing your influence in that situation is number one, do not be judgmental. And sometimes that can be very difficult to do. But it's very important that you hold this space and that you really look at that person, acknowledge that they are simply in a different place on their journey, and that you aren't criticizing them or coming at them from a place of judgment, because it's impossible to judge somebody without them feeling it at some level, right? And we've all been there where we feel judged by someone else, and that's not comfortable. It's a very uncomfortable space, and it doesn't increase their influence. When we feel like someone is judging us, we do not have increased trust in that relationship. They're not increasing their influence, right? We do feel like the relationship strengthens when someone comes at us with a place of respect and saying, you know what, I recognize that you're in a different place in your journey, and that's okay, because we're all at different levels on different places on our journey, different steps, and sometimes even different days, right? Everyone is different. Every day is different. Everyone's background and paradigm and experiences are different, and everyone's growth journey is going to be different. So, very important that as we grow and step more into that authenticity, when we encounter someone who is struggling with that, that number one, we do not judge them, but just recognizing, hey, none of us were perfect. None of us are perfect. And some point in our lives, we probably struggled with being transparent and authentic at the same time. So, number two, um, I believe it's really helpful to recognize when authenticity needs not dialed down, because that's not the right word. We do need to be authentic and be ourselves. But it's also possible to balance that with some tact, right, in this situation. Recognizing that if that person is uncomfortable, there again, not dialing down our authenticity or not creating a fake sense of identity. Very important that we do not do that. But it's also helpful when we recognize that that person is uncomfortable, and balancing whatever we're talking about or whatever we're doing, or however we're interacting, balancing that with the tact so that that other person doesn't feel like we're judging them, even if we're not, right? It's very easy for someone who's insecure or not confident to feel like they're being judged even if they're not. And so as leaders, as women, we have to take the initiative and take the responsibility for stepping up in that situation, and really, taking the high road and just recognizing they're not on the same path, they're not on the same place in their journey, but also being very careful and very sensitive in the relationship to make sure that they don't feel like we are critical of them or judging them in that place. And I think that's true not just for authenticity. I think that really applies for anything. Anytime we meet someone who is not as mature or hasn't developed their character to the same strength yet, and that's okay, right? It's just looking down as an oak tree and recognizing the little seedling around you is not as strong as you are. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no judgment in that. It's just an awareness that people are at different places in their journey, and stepping into that acceptance of that, regardless to what characteristic we're talking about, making sure that we don't come across as being judgmental. And that can be very hard to do, right? Particularly as we interact and we're trying to hopefully help them grow and help nurture them. It's very easy, if we're not conscious about how we come across, for that other person to feel like it's critical or negative. So there again, just balancing that with some tact can really go a long way. I remember hearing there again, John Maxwell, but I remember he used an analogy one time of a velvet covered brick. And I like that because when you think about that, the brick really is your values, right? Your character and your strength. But it's okay to cover that with some velvet to just make that a little softer, right? A little fuzzier, a little warm and fuzzier, a little more pleasant, perhaps. But underneath it all, you still are the brick. You still have your foundational values and character, and you don't compromise on that. So just a few thoughts there on what to do as you stand in your authenticity and you encounter people ultimately who aren't comfortable with that. We love them anyway. Reach back and hopefully help them along on their journey, but always from a place of intent to help, intent to serve, rather than intent to judge. Until next time.
Start increasing your influence and maximizing your potential with Ria's audiobooks. Available at audible.com, amazon.com, and iBooks. Please visit riastory.com to learn about Ria's books, resources, speaking, and training programs. Thanks for listening.